because we're still, we're going to finish up this chapter today, which is the joint. That's actually going to put us at a really good time frame, because that leaves us 10, 11, and 12 left to do. And that gives me plenty of time to cover the muscle and the nervous system. All right, so that's going to be really good. Now, we left off at this point yesterday because we had talked quite a bit about the joints. We talked about the types of joints, their flexibility of the joints, the structure of the joints, whether it was like fibrous, for example, if we had the synovial joints. One of the things that you're going to find with every single joint of the body. Now, think about this for a second, okay? I mentioned that all of these were joints, right? All right, I've got joints here, okay? I've got joints here, okay? So everybody kind of following me on this. I've got nice joints like here, here. I've got joints here, 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 and this hip bone. What's the difference in them?
Ability to move.
Their ability to move. So we've got the joints that we classify as no movement, all right? We classify joints that are little movement, and we classify joints as freely movable. That tells me every single joint that's existing in my body has a range of motion. It's been studied. We know that this range of motion applies to these joints. There are different factors that are going to affect a range of motion. When we look at the range of motion, we're going to say that we have active ROM or passive ROM. You would think that it's backwards based on what it's telling us. Active, the amount of movement accomplished by a muscle contraction, all right? For skeletal muscle, that means, for the most part, your actions you're placing upon it. Because for the most part, skeletal is under voluntary control. Note I said for the most part. Okay, we're going to find out when we study that, the part that's not. Now, passive, having an outside force. Good. Well, if we're thinking about movement, and this is something that you'll find out because you're going into physical therapy, right? Okay. She's my physical therapist after I've had my knee surgery. All right. And y'all remember I kind of demonstrated that knees, head propped up, head in the bandage. Comes time for me to go see Kanisha. Get in there. Kanisha's like, oh yeah, Dr. Young. All right. And she gets me up on the table. She unbandages everything. She might put the heat wrap on it and stuff like that. But then she's going to come over and she's going to go. What? That was my outside force. All right. That was something else pushing that joint for the range of motion, for the movement. So it requires the help of something else when we have the passive movement. Now, both types of movement, which are going to give us a range of motion that can be determined, that can be measured. It's influenced by what shapes are present. Remember how when we were looking yesterday and we talked about maybe it was ellipsoid or condyloid or hinge or ball and socket? Okay, so what is going to be the shapes of those articulating surfaces that have to be present? What about how much and the shape of the cartilage? All right, one that I keep mentioning that I think is just so cool is that cartilage that's right here in what we think of as our jaw. Okay, that helps with my articulation, okay, and therefore the actions of my jaw. But I got other cartilages, right? I think about the pubic symphysis, all right? Still get movement there, very little. Because you don't want them bones really doing a lot of spreading and, you know, that sort of thing. Got it to get ready for baby birth, okay? But I've got a very thick piece of cartilage and I've got a good structure. So therefore very little movement, all right? How about strength and location of ligaments and tendons? Mentioning her name. Why? Why do I keep going to the knee? It's going to be the most damaged joint of the body. Yep. Now, and looking at this, all right, I'm being shown some muscles. I'm being shown tendons and ligaments, all right? When we begin to look at the ligament that runs directly over the knee, all right, that is a very tough, hefty, big ligament. Not as big as our IT band, okay, that you see running for the lateral structure, okay? But when we look through this midline and we see the quadriceps tendon, okay, when we see this, all right, we've got the patella and our patellar tendon, patella being a sesamoid because it's a bone that developed, and tendon, okay? That structure, based on that tendon, is affecting this movement, making it that hinge joint that we talked about, okay? So, strength and the location of tendons and ligaments are going to affect it. When you look, it's not really representative here, but ligaments that exist in the knee, they actually do this number from the tibia to the femur. They actually make this X shape because it's controlling movement in that knee. ACL, for example, that means it's the one that's more anterior of the X, okay? That's usually one that gets torn a lot. All right, they can go in, maybe do surgery on it, that sort of thing, okay? That's controlling a lot of the movement that you're getting in that joint. What about muscles? Muscles are going to affect what that joint does. Is there any fluid? And then, is there any fluid around that joint? When you hurt your knee, did it build up fluid on the knee? Okay. Did they have to draw the fluid off?
Yeah.
Oh man, you look lucky. Okay. So mine, when I hurt it, blew up like that. I mean, I couldn't even move. I didn't put pressure on it or anything because that's how bad it was. And first thing they had to do was stick that needle, whoosh, draw that fluid off. All right.
They cauliflower ear and they had to translate
From your ear. Drawing fluid off is not a whole lot of fun. Okay, just saying. How about pain? Pain is going to affect how much freedom of movement you're going to have in that joint. It could actually be one of our ball and sockets, okay, that's the most freely movable in the body, but if you got some pain, it's not going to be freely movable. That's going to be a factor. How about the use and disuse? Well, all right, let's say that I continue to do this number until I retire. And I continue to teach till I retire. And as y'all can see, I would like to be still in the classroom, right? Okay. And let's say that as long as I continue to try to stay mobile, I'm good. But then I decide, oh, maybe I can retire. You know, because I'm thinking I'm going to work till lunch day I die. But, you know, let's say that I'm finally thinking, oh man, I can retire. And now, rather than having to get up every single morning, I get to sleep late, and then I, you know, just kind of move from the bed to the TV, watch shows, you know, and don't do all this movement I'm doing. What am I doing to that joint? What's that going to do to it? Well, it's going to make it weak, but it's going to also do what? It's going to stiffen, make it tight. Now, here's the other thing. The older we get, the more these tissues are going to break down. Does that make sense? And if that's the case, if those tissues are going to start to break down, that's going to affect the makeup of that joint. Now, here's the other thing that you look at. Remember how, I think it was when we were in the tissues chapter, one of the things I talked about with cartilage, we need to make sure before exercise and everything that we warm up really good, because that's pushing fluid back and forth into that cartilage that does not repair, that has no blood supply. It is dependent on being compressed and released so that we can move the water in and out to get nutrients and waste out. And if I'm not physically up doing something, then I'm not using that, and that's going to make that cartilage begin to deteriorate, which is just something to kind of think about, which is why movement is so good. You know, they tell people when you retire, whatever you do, don't stop moving. You know, keep moving.